tailor-made drummer. Hi, Tanisha. I'm so glad you're here. Soul Sister PhD is a really dear friend of mine, Ramo. She's super, super smart. Okay, so you guys, hi, Dana. So today, today.
Which one are you looking at, Soph?
That's a good question. I think we have two screens going, you guys, because we're doing this both on a Zoom. You know what? I'm probably going to toggle between both. We're doing this on a Zoom, you guys, and we're doing it on IG Live. Hi, Starseed555. Hi, Kitty Bear Mommy. Thanks for joining, and S Dorsey. So this is another salon, and what I'm talking about today is development for television and film. I have learned a lot about this most recently, and a lot of what I learned, frankly, I learned from my amazing friend and guest right here, Michelle Ramo-Kuyate. So I guess what I did when I worked in the music business way back in the day when I worked at Jive is hey Kierna, yay, Kierna's here. I did A&R. So Ramo, I did A&R when I was at Jive and I was a talent scout. So I was the front-facing person. Danielle is here.
Hi, Danielle.
I was the front-facing person for the label in terms of being the talent scout and going out and looking for projects. Is that kind of the same thing?
Yeah. As an executive, yeah. Well, even as a producer, yeah.
Right, and that's also analogous to being an editor at a publishing house. So those are all kind of the same things. Where you're, hi Christian Cola, these are the people that go out and look for projects and artists to develop. So I've been developing a number of projects. I actually have a couple with Ramo, but I want to tell you guys about Michelle first. Let me just brag about my friend. So I met Ramo in '99 when she and our amazing friend Michelle C., who's also incredible at development, were working at Miramax, and I was pitching them a project called Shaolin Wu-Tang about my ex and the RZA. And I remember the first time, Ramo, that we went out for lunch. You took me out for lunch. We went to a sushi place in Tribeca, and I got there a couple minutes before you did. And I remember you walked in the door and you were on the phone and you were like reading somebody. You were like yelling at somebody. You were like, get this. And I was like, oh,
I'm pretty sure I was trying to get a deal closed. That was a difficult deal. I was trying to get a deal closed.
And that was such a small moment, but it really made a difference to me because watching you as a woman be so firm and assertive and so confident was was really inspiring for me. So that was super inspiring. So since then, Michelle Ramo has been president of production at Sony Pictures Animation, senior vice president of production at Paramount, Nickelodeon, and Miramax. And what I want to point out about that is that means that she has done both live action and animation. Now that's really, really rare. Most people do one or the other, but she's actually done both. And we'll talk about, you can tell us a little bit later about kind of the difference between the development process for those two. Mm-hmm. So the movies that she has been involved with, there was an amazing movie on Miramax called Chocolat, Silver Linings Playbook, which I'm sure a lot of you saw, Puss in Boots and Hotel Transylvania 1 and 2. And between everything she's worked on, her films have grossed over $3.5 billion worldwide and nominated for multiple Oscars, BAFTAs, and Golden Globes. She is currently developing a number of film and TV projects. I'm very happy. And one of them is a biopic about Ruth Handler, the creator of the Barbie doll with Amazon Studios, and an untitled, I'm super excited about this project, an untitled Rikers Island project that focuses on the first female commissioner of the New York State Corrections Department, the first African-American warden and inmates who make a daring rescue when an airplane crashes on the island. She's doing that with 11 films, and an animated sports movie that posits a co-ed league for Sony Pictures Animation. So she is incredibly Starseed555. She is incredibly impressive, remarkably accomplished. I'm so thrilled. Thank you so much, Ramo, for joining me in this. I have really learned so much. And you know, how I learned from Ramo is equally in the stuff that she says, but also in the questions that she asks. For instance, when I was writing, yeah, Kierna, she's a beast. Ramo is a beast, and she's a Brooklynite, East Flatbush, East Flatbush, Mill Basin, Brooklynite. What I have found, Ramo, was when I went through the process of writing my memoir, a lot of the development that I went through there was those questions, right? Hi, Brian, you know, those questions, right? Like, well, what about this, Sophie? What about this? What about this? And those questions are really annoying sometimes, right? Like, I don't fucking want to go deeper. I don't want to tell you more. I don't, you know, but you realize that they're critical to the development of it. So I wanted to ask you, how do you learn the basics of development?
Well, first of all, thank you. I'm so
happy you're here.
Fun. I know, this is so fun. I'm so happy to be here talking to you this way on two screens. I'm like, where am I looking? Where am I looking? I'm going to look at both. So I actually went to this program at USC called the Peter Stark program, and it was a producing program. And I had in my first year this woman, and she still goes around to a lot of the studios and does these like weeks long seminar. And I was lucky enough to have her as my my first teacher. And I really didn't know that much about development. I just kind of knew I wanted to be a producer, but I didn't know that much about it. And a thing that she did was we watched and analyzed a whole shitload of films to start with. And just really analyzed, you know, she was very good at sort of breaking down a movie and having you understand that there's a structure that's in place. There's a storytelling structure that's in place, but how you bend it and play with it so that things don't feel formulaic. And that's, and when we get more into details about that, but that's a lot through the characters and, you know, skilled people can do things in certain places. But so we watched a lot of films. We broke a lot of films down. We analyzed a lot of films. We looked at a lot of things. And then she did something, I think at the time I wanted to wring her neck, but it was incredibly genius. She made all of us, even those who are not writers, and I don't, and listen, I can write, I understand that, but I'm not a writer. That's not where my, you know, that's not where my skill set lies, but she did make all of us write half a screenplay. So we had to outline and beat out a screenplay and then write half of it. And I hated her for it because I thought, oh my God, like this isn't what I do. And this is awful. And I don't want to do this. But the exercise taught me so much because I really started to understand the things that I was analyzing on the screen, and you know how to sort of, you know, was it good? No, but it taught me a lot in having to do it and also understanding how hard it is. But just having to do that really helped me a lot. And then after that, it was just a lot of practice. It was reading a lot of scripts. You know, when
how many scripts do you think you've read? Like just ballpark.
Thousands.
Yeah.
Thousands, easily thousands. Thousands. And then, you know, when I got my first job, which was at Miramax Films, I determined to be a sponge. So I listened a lot. I asked to go to weekend read meetings and listen to the executives who were more seasoned than I was. I asked to be on note calls. I read notes, and it just was, I mean, I feel it was definitely a skill I had, but I had to develop it. I mean, any skill, you have to develop it. So it was just a lot of listening and reading and understanding. And then it just evolved over time. But that's where I really learned the basics. And then when I was an assistant and a junior executive, it was just a lot of looking at what the other people that I respected were doing.
So I want to talk a little bit, this is kind of a little bit off topic, but I want to speak to the point that you just mentioned, that you took on more than was necessarily within your purview, right?
Oh, 1,000%.
And that, I will say this to everybody out there. who has aspirations and ambitions to rise above whatever your station is at your job, a lot of how I got ahead was that number one, I was really, really competent, right? I knew what the basics of my job were, and you get the basics done. At Shaolin, we have a saying, I don't know how to say it in Mandarin because I'm Korean, don't know how to say it in Korean either, but at Shaolin, we have a saying that the basics are the top and the top are the basics. So I have learned animal forms, weapons forms, I knew the broadsword, the straight sword, all that shit. I forgot all of that shit. I don't have any of that in my middle-aged head. What I do remember are my basics, like my punches and my kicks and my movements and everything. So the basics are really important. But once I knew that I could competently cover the foundation of my job, I then would say, I'm sure you did this too, Ramo, right? You would be like, okay, you know what? I've done that. And you would go to your boss and you would say, do you mind if I join the call, right? Or do you mind if I read the script? Or can I give you my thoughts about this script? And it's really, really important. But again, having been on both sides, having been an assistant and had assistants and had staffs and everything, don't do that before you're ready. Meaning, if your job is to be an assistant, be the best fucking assistant you can be, right? Answer the phones, you know, set up the meetings, do the scheduling and everything. And once you have determined that you can do that well and you've proven that to your boss, then ask for other responsibilities. So the next question I want to ask you is, how did you and how do you, since you are not the creator necessarily of all of these ideas, right? How do you get the ideas that you want to develop? And that's the first part of the question. Then the second part is, what is it that you're looking for? But let's talk about the mechanics of it first, right?
Yeah.
You, whether you're in-house at Sony or Paramount, how do you actually get the materials?
Particularly as an executive, primarily through agents and managers. Primarily through, particularly if it's, you know, screenplays themselves, books, you know, ideas, pitches, those kinds of things. Typically, I'm introduced through managers and agents. However, I have, you know, looked for books on my own, you know, just scoured through, you know, lists and things like that. You know, when I was a junior executive, I would read, you know, articles and magazines. I was always reading and looking for things and ideas. So it's a combination of getting things from, you know, and the higher up you get it as an executive, the more and more and more that you get. But when you're a junior executive, you kind of have to go digging for things. So articles, you know, like I said, books, old books, backlist books, you know, writers that you have relationships with. A lot of people come to me with like a kernel of an idea at this point. You know, sometimes I have an idea on my own, but usually, and even then, I would always bring a writer into it because I don't feel like that's what I do. But that's how I get most of my stuff.
So let's talk a little bit to, you know, for people out there who don't know, who don't have agents, who aren't writers, who don't have, would you ever get an idea from an attorney? Because in the music business at this point, attorneys are actually shopping deals as well.
Yeah, I would, and I could, particularly when I was an executive, I had to get things through either an agent, a manager, or I couldn't get unsolicited things, and attorneys. I couldn't get anything unsolicited, so I'd have to get it that way. And I certainly could. I haven't, but I could, and I would. But it just hasn't happened. But I could.
So let's talk about the fact that, I've got this as a question for later on. You know, a lot of people say, how do you get a book deal? How do you get a television deal? How do you get a film deal? How do you get a record deal? And I have to say, this is the reality, that it really is about who you know. So you could have the best idea in the world, but if you are not connected to people like a Ramo or you know, anybody else who are in these positions, it's very, very hard to cut through. Now, that's not necessarily fair. And it doesn't mean that there aren't plenty of ideas and artists that have excellent ones that have just fallen, you know, and in the forest, and they've made no sound because no one was there to hear them. But it speaks to the point that it is really, really, really key to network and develop your relationships. Wouldn't you say, Remo?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've also gotten things like through people I know, but again, it's people who I know. I've helped people get agents, but the way they've gotten through to me is through someone that I know. You know,
Yes.
I work with women in film out here a lot, and we take in a lot of mentees and people, and that's the way they start to get connected. They start to
Yes.
get connected through, you know, me, and then you know, and then I might, you know, turn them on to someone else. I mean, I judged a screenwriting contest last year for Humanitas, and I loved the winner's the winner's script, and I thought it could really be developed into something as a TV series. And just the timing of everything, where he won, and when he came out to LA is when you know, the Writers Guild and the agents separated, so he had a really hard time getting management, and I was trying to help him. And then this fall, I just teamed up with someone else who knew him, and we just were like, let's just do it ourselves. Let's just,
Good.
yeah, yeah.
So Jake is here. Our buddy Jake.
Hi, Jake.
Is here. Hi, Jake.
Hi, Jake.
And Dre, my friend Dre, who's an amazing actor, he said it's called Work and Belief and the Hustle. Yeah. And Kierna said, not just be transactional. Kierna, I think you're talking about maintaining relationships, right? If that's the point that you're speaking to, I totally agree. Like, it's annoying for me when the only time anybody calls is, hey, can you do this for me? Hey, can you do that for me? I like the notion that we have a relationship beyond purely the transaction. Let's talk about, so when people present you ideas, what are the things that jump out at you? Not that you're necessarily looking for A, B, C, D, Remo, but
yeah, well, it kind of. I mean, a lot of it at this point, because like you said, we met in 99. A lot of it at this point, I have to really think about these questions, because a lot of it at this point is just a gut. It's just, I know when I know, you know, I just feel it. I just know it. But if I were to break it down, and it differs well, in the macro, it actually doesn't differ for TV or film or animation. It doesn't. It's about, you know, does obviously the characters are the most important thing. The interesting characters, really great characters. Maybe even a way in that you haven't seen before, because we all say, like, there's only so many stories and so many ways, but a lot of it is about what's the way in, and what's the way in through the character. Also, just what the conceit of it is, what's the concept. Like, there are many for movies, for example, you know, there are many great, you know, character driven movies that are so hard to get made now. But now it's like, is there a hook? Is there something that's going to get, as we say, butts in seats? Right. But even with TV, if you want to go and sell a TV show, it's kind of like, what's the hook of that show? What's, again, and it has to do with the character, and it has to do with the idea, what the idea behind it is. So it's character, it's the concept, it can be the setting. And I'm talking more broad than I'm talking myself personally. Sure. So those are the key, I think, elements. And then you start to look at, you know, is this a story that gets told in 90 minutes? Does it have like that beginning, middle, and end? And that's how you decide if, you know, if it's a film, or is it something that needs to be told? You know, can you see it being told? Is it open-ended, and can you see it being told? You know, I don't typically beat it out for myself, but it's just the way I think. You know, sure. Is it something that's for television? Do you see it really going open-ended, or does it feel somewhere in between? And then you have your limited series, or you know, mini series, however you want to, whichever way you want to term it. And then there's also sometimes something feels like it should be a doc series. I mean, we looked at something that we were thinking like, is it that? And each of those has a different feel to them, but that's more about like what the story is. So I would say that the key things are the characters, the concept, and the story. Those are the real things that I look for. And do they hook me? Is there something unique about them? Is there something that resonates with me, not only with me personally, but which can be universal? So even stories that feel so specific, and I love things that are very specific, I also look for the universal, because I think we can all find a way to relate to most stories.
So to that point, you know, when I was writing my memoir, you know, so one of my editors was like, well, you know what, Sophia, we want you to be, you know, there has to be, you have to be relatable. And I have to tell you, Ramo, I was like,
what? Oh, bristled, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You want me to be relatable? The whole fucking reason you want my book is because there's no other Sophia Chang, right? I'm the baddest bitch in the room. You don't have another me. And they were like, that's not really what we're talking about, right?
We're just going to say, I can rebuttal that, but go ahead.
Yes, no. So tell me, why don't you tell me what they were saying? Because you know what they were saying.
I know what they were saying. There is no other Sophia Chang, and that's the interest part. That's the unique part. That's the thing. And there are many things. Right? What? That's the hook. That's the hook. That's why I said there could be hook through the character. There could be a hook through the story. There could be a hook through the concept of it. That's the hook. There is no one else like you and your particular point of view, but inside of your story, there are things that I relate to. There are things that you talk about. So I might not do it the exact way Sophia Chang would do it. I love when we talk about you in third person. I might not do it that way, but there were things in there that I was going, oh man, oh man, I've done that. I've felt that way. I've acted that way. I can relate to that. I might not be able to relate to that, but I understand it. I'm empathetic to that. Okay. So, and it's not everything. It's not all of it. I wasn't, raised in an immigrant family, but there were other things in there. And I think that's what they were talking about.
Right. So would you say then that there is this really kind of, and it can be tricky, right? It's an artful intersection in whether it's television or film of being unique, but also being universal simultaneously, right? So we could look at something so like pure fantasy, right? Or pure science fiction. Like I remember when The Sopranos came out, right? And we were all obsessed with The Sopranos. And Hesock, who's so fucking smart, the first thing he said to me was, Sophia, this is a family drama. Exactly. This is a family drama wrapped in the New Jersey Italian mafia, but it's a family drama. And this is the story of a man going through a midlife crisis. And I was like, oh, he's fucking right. Right? That there are these things that can pull you in. Like there are certain shows that I can't, for instance, House of Cards and Succession, they're hugely popular. They're lauded. They're really successful. I really can't stand those shows because, Ramo, I don't have an emotional in. Right? Because those shows seem to be about me quite singularly and well written and directed and acted, all of that, but they are about people who are singularly ambitious and in a way that is so craven, right? And so vicious. And so to that I go, I get it, and you're so talented and the storytelling is great, but I'm not engaged.
And clearly people are, and there are people who are. And the other thing to always remember is this is all subjective. It's all subjective. So you try to get a relatability. Like I might find things in that show that I relate to that get underneath that you might not see.
Yes.
And so it's just, you know, it's trying to find it. It's trying to find those things. It's trying to be able to articulate those things. And, you know, you mentioned that I'm working on an animated sports movie right now. And, you know, there are things that go along with the sports movie that you can't really fully avoid. And it is all about, how do you wrap it up in something else? How do you have a different point of view on it? How do you create the characters in a way that feel different? It's like a family drama set in the mafia.
Right.
It's like that. It's like, you know, is it a particular brand of humor? Is it is it really told from someone's, you know, point of view that you haven't heard before? So yes, a lot of things do have a familiarity in them.
Right.
And then you find the thing to hook people into.
I mean, I will also say that, to your point about you could have a different read on a show than me, that's why I love talking to you and Michelle. Like, I'll call Michelle and I'll say, oh, I just saw this and this was my take. What was your take? Because you guys can look at it with a critical eye in a way that I can't. So I'm getting more into film and television development, but I haven't done it for 20, you know, between the two of you, you guys have fucking 40 years, over 40 years of experience doing this, right? Like you said, I'm sure Michelle too, you guys have read literally thousands and thousands and thousands of scripts, right? So when you watch those shows or those movies, you're going to have a very unique perspective that comes from being able to deconstruct it in a way that I don't know how to do that yet. You know, I'm learning.
Here's the thing, and I think I've said this, maybe I've said this to you before. I try hard really not to. When I'm watching, when I have to, a lot of times, there'll be times where I'll need to watch something for something that I'm working on because it's like something else, or it has a similarity, or it's something that can help me. You know, if I understand this and how they worked that, then I should watch that. Or, you know, same with the movie. But I really try hard not to bring that into, and I don't even have to try. I sort of let go of it and I just watch.
You can do that?
I can, because I don't analyze. It doesn't mean that I don't dislike things or feel things aren't working for me, but I'll figure that out after I'm done watching, rather than while I'm watching it. Or it might just hit me like a ton of bricks, like, oh my God, there's no characters set up in this movie. I can't watch this whole thing. You know, so it might, but I try not to, and I enjoy much, much better. And when something's really good, then I really can do it. And don't ask me to analyze it right after, because I have to take a minute, you know, to really think about it.
Oh, good to know. You know, I want to refer to something that you just said about watching something in reference to another project that you're working on. I talked about this on Thursday about how I got a book deal and the notion of comps, right? Does comp stand for comparison? Okay, so will you tell everybody what comps are?
Well, it's like when you it's just saying what it's like. It's like this show. It's like you might do a show that takes place, you know, I'm trying to think of something. You might do a show that takes place in the world of ice skating, but it's really like The Sopranos, just because we just talked about that. So, you know, so you would, you know, it's, I'm just met with someone who's developing an idea, and they're sort of like, it's an animated television, an animated TV series. And they're like, it's sort of like The Simpsons and the regular show. You know, and then I'll say, well, how do those two intersect? So you use that as a comparison. You'll often use a comp for budget, you know, what it feels like, what it looks like.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, you can use it for a number of things, but a lot of times it's to help sell what you're talking about. So, you know, it's just, it's using, you know, there used to be a thing when very, very, very high concept movies sold as a pitch, you would say it's this meets this.
Right.
Now it's just more, it's more to give people a tonal reference, what it's
Okay.
totally like, what it feels like, especially now with, and you know, we're going through this when we're working on a TV show
Right.
now with not only cable, but streaming series. Comedy is different than the sitcom, you know, so like tone of comedy. So there's sitcom comedy, but then there's shows on streaming that are comedies but don't have that same tone to them.
Right.
There's a lot of dramedies, so it's also to give you the feel of what it's like.
So I want to talk, because this is the thing that you and Michelle really drove into me, right? We have to get the tone. Sophia, what is the tone of your show? So when I first started developing my idea for my show in my head, Ramo, it was a fucking 1 hour drama. I'm going, it's The Wire, it's The Sopranos. And then Michelle was like, Sophia, you're fucking hilarious. And I was like, but it's not a comedy, right? Mm-hmm. And she said, no, it's not a comedy, but it's going to have comedic elements. And as we teased it out, mm-hmm. and as she kept probing, right, we finally got to the point where I was like, oh shit, it's a comedy, but it's a dramedy, right? So can you describe a little bit what you mean by tone? Because I think that's really important, because that took a while to understand. And now I understand that it's fucking key, right? It's central.
Right. What I mean by tone is exactly what you just said. I mean, there are straight dramas. You know, there are many movies, you know, that are they're straight dramas. There's no levity in them. You know, Schindler's List is a straight drama. Right? You know, there's not.
Oh, it's not a musical comedy?
Yeah. Not a musical comedy. And then there are movies that are dramedies. They have comedy and drama in them. Then there are movies.
Silver Linings Playbook as a dramedy?
I would.
Okay.
I would.
Okay.
A drama comedy. I would. Mm-hmm. And then there's you know, then there's comedies, and so like you know, there's different kinds of comedies. So there would be a comedy that's like just a comedy like Tootsie or Mrs. Doubtfire.
Okay.
But then there's really broad comedy like Dodgeball. So there's different kinds of comedy that you're dealing with. So
when you say broad comedy, Dodgeball versus Mrs. Doubtfire comedy, what's the difference? Is it because it's so physical? Is it because it's almost slapstick?
Well, I mean, Dodgeball has a really heightened tone.
Okay.
And Mrs. Doubtfire, it, you know, has a lot of family drama in it. So it's a comedy, but it's grounded more. It's more grounded. Tootsie's much more grounded. You know, all those like romantic comedies, they're much more grounded.
Right. And when you say a heightened tone,
what?
Sorry, when you say a heightened tone, give me an example, whether it's a drama or a comedy, of a show that's on right now that has a heightened tone. Is Westworld a heightened tone or just a heightened world?
I think it's a really heightened world.
Okay, so what has a heightened tone? Is Succession a heightened tone? Is Fleabag a heightened tone?
Is what?
Fleabag?
Fleabag's a heightened tone, I think, yeah. Fleabag is a heightened tone. Succession, no. I think it's it's almost soap opera-y.
Okay.
You know, it's almost soap opera-y. It got a little melodrama going for it.
Right. Yeah. So another question is, how do you approach adapting a book?
You know, books are fun. I love doing book adaptations, and they're also super tricky. It's a very different medium. It's very internal. You get a lot of internal dialogue. You get to really get behind the characters and get into their thinking. And the big trick in them is to find ways to externalize the internal.
Okay.
So if a book is narrated or told about, it's mostly about what people are thinking. It's not only about what they're doing.
Sure.
So it's finding a way to artfully get that out through dialogue, through dramatizing it, through scenes with other characters. That's why a lot of times, you know, especially if it's a troubled movie, they'll end up, I mean, there are times people absolutely choose voiceover as a choice, but I've worked in situations where voiceover has come in to solve for that inability to really get it out. And then it's also about like how popular is the book, because the more popular the book is, the more it's beloved, the more beholden you are to trying
So
to
Eat, Pray, Love, for instance.
Yeah.
Is that because it was such a huge book? Are you saying that the audience would want you to be more married to the text?
Yeah, I think so. Or closer, as close, because so many people have seen it. I mean, I've worked on, like, when we optioned Chocolat, no one, you know, no one knew it was a manuscript and no one knew the book very well. And so we took a lot of liberties. We used a lot of the ideas from the book, but we took a lot of liberties, and the author was really okay with it because she felt that we captured the essence of the book, the thematics, and that's what was really important to her. And some authors feel certain ways and others, and again, like, you know, like the Twilight series was insanely popular, and those movies, same with the Harry Potter series, they held very close.
They were close.
They were very, very close, and it doesn't always make it work. It doesn't always make it work. In those instances, it worked, and because the fan base was enormous. But it doesn't always work, and it's tricky. And the more popular they are, the harder it is. You know, because there's an audience going to be really, really there to judge them.
Yes. So C. Stedman said the best book adaptation he's seen is Gone Girl. I didn't know that it was a book. So I can't say. And my girl Kierna said Secret Life of Bees. She thought that was really well done. But yeah, I understand the complication, because you and I and Michelle are talking about a book adaptation right now, and you realize, you know, in that conversation that we had with Hesock, he was saying that. He said so much of this is internal, and you can write in a book. Like in my memoir, I talk, available on Amazon, everybody. It's on Audible, and it's going to be out September 8th in print, pre-orders. In my book, so much of it is emotional exposition, right? I felt this way, and then, you know, I thought to myself this, and now that I'm writing a screenplay, right now I'm going, oh, fuck, Sophia, people who are watching your television show, they're not going to have the script in front of them, right? So exactly to your point, how do you translate that? So it is through dialogue, it is through action, it can be through gesture, right? It can be, you know, the simple raising of an eyebrow, or like having my arms akimbo, you know, things like that in terms of body language. And then
yeah. And it's it's also about, you know, you might have to create a scene that captures the essence of that internal idea.
Okay.
So for example, I was just talking to a writer who is one of the producers on Mrs. America, and he talked about this scene where Phyllis was with her son, and
at the piano?
Yeah.
Oh, I just saw that last night. I just told Danielle about it. Yo, that shit was fucking searing, brutal. You guys, we're talking about on Hulu. It's a Hulu original. It's a series called Mrs. America. It centers really on Phyllis Schlafly, who's actually terrible, played by the astonishingly beautiful Blanchett. And I can't tell you what the scene is about because it'll spoil it. But to me, this is the best scene that I've seen yet.
And it was brutal, yet it took a turn in the second part of the scene where she actually said, this won't ruin the scene, if you're going to do that, be more careful. Be more careful. And I thought, wait a minute, did she just let him know that she underneath accepts
that she's giving him permission.
And I was like, whoa. And so I actually am about to work with the writer that wrote that episode. And I said,
oh, are you serious?
Oh. Yes. And I said, did you humanize her in that moment? And he said, yeah. And that was just, yeah, he wrote that scene. And it was expressing a point of view that he knew she had, but figuring out a way to dramatize it.
Right. Because Danielle was telling me, because she knows a lot about Phyllis Schlafly and this history, that apparently I didn't know that she had 6 kids, that she fucking loved that son. And she lived
her favorite son. Yeah, that was her favorite son. Yeah.
In later life. Oh, that's incredible. Yeah. And then the other question that I wanted to ask you, a couple more questions. What was in developing, what was the hardest lesson you learned? I'm not necessarily saying failure, but like, what was the thing that was really hard and you went, and it's important?
Someone I worked for actually, she said, notes are just notes. Notes are just notes. And that was a really hard lesson to learn, because like everything else, this is all subjective, and we're giving our notes and we're talking about things, but you're giving it to give your point of view. You're giving it to give it support. It's editorial, and the writer has to take it and make it their own, and they have to figure out their way into it. So to be so married to your ideas, that's what she meant.
That's what it meant.
Okay. That's what it meant. It's just, they're just ideas. They're just thoughts and ideas. And to be so married to them, to be so, focused on, there is no right and wrong in creative. It's just that you're giving your reaction, really is what you're giving. And you're giving almost your advice. But to be so married, and when you're working in these situations, you're getting notes from a lot of different places. You're getting notes from your producer, you're getting notes from your executive, you're getting notes from the head of the company, you're getting notes from a lot of places. And what I do as a producer, when I'm an executive, there's a producer to do this. What I do as a producer is to try to help synthesize it down to what of these things really resonate with the writer and really work with the writer. So it was just about like not being, especially like just so married to what your thoughts and ideas are. That's what I mean by notes are just notes.
That's interesting. Yeah. Oh, good. As the writer, I'm going to take that when somebody gives me notes. I'm going to be like, hey, Ramo, guess what? Notes are just notes, and totally be dismissive.
It's not to be flippant. It's just meaning to loosen up. When you're young and you're doing something and you're really driving and you're really good at it, you can see it. You can, and not even just, people can just get really married to their point of view. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
And I feel like as a producer, it's my job. It's not my job to, and sometimes I will say, okay, Soph, if you don't see it, I understand that. But you're not going to like this part. I'll go, but I don't know how you're going to do it.
Yeah. No. That's for sure. I mean, every time when my editors gave me notes and stuff like that, they were not interactively attached. And there were some that I actually took almost every single note and did these kind of editorial gymnastics and these writing gymnastics. But there were ones that I said, you know what, this is how I feel about it, and this is why I'm not going to take that note. And
there's another thing too that we say a lot. What's the note underneath the note? What's the note underneath the note?
Okay.
All right, so let me explain that. So the note underneath the note is, do they really mean this? Do they literally mean, I don't like this character? Or does it just mean that you haven't done something up there in the first act to hook them into the character?
Okay.
Like, so I'm working on a movie right now where the character is he's a little jerky at the beginning of the movie. But what we didn't do is, when we got him into the situation, we didn't put him through his paces. We didn't have him have to have some humility. And as soon as we did that, no one cared that we didn't like him all that much in the beginning.
Interesting.
Because we found a way to humanize him or find our way into him.
Right. Right. So it's not necessarily that you're questioning the person that's giving you the notes, but you're just trying to go a little bit deeper and figure out different ways that
you are, or you're trying to, it's almost like figuring out subtext, because sometimes you'll have, like when I'm an executive, right? I have so many projects that I'm dealing with. So I might have something that's really bugging me or bothering me. And so I'll give the note. And then and because I know that there's a note behind the note, I'll say, well, I don't know, maybe that's not exactly it, but why don't you think about what I'm saying and see if you can get at what's underneath? Like, I'm not the doctor. The writer is the doctor. I'm just telling you what the symptoms are, and then you figure out the problem.
You go fix it.
Yeah. Now, as a creative producer, I work with the writer to help figure out that.
Right. Right.
But it's kind of just, again, it's almost like understanding the subtext of something. It's like, if someone says, well, God, that end of Act 2 doesn't make sense. Well, is it the end of Act 2 that doesn't make sense, or is it that you didn't do the work to get there? So do you change the end of Act 2, or do you change what's leading up to it? That's what I mean, looking for the note behind the note.
Gotcha. My dear friend Stefan Bristol just joined. I don't know if he just joined, but I just saw that he's here. He directed this really gorgeous movie last year. It premiered on my birthday, May 17th, which means my birthday is coming up, called See You Yesterday. It was a Netflix original. Everybody, you should really watch it. It's about these two kids, Black nerds in middle school. Stefan, are they in middle school? And they create this time machine, and it's so gorgeous. And my boy Stroh is in it, whom I think is a phenomenal actor, and I'm going to try to help make him a star. But it's subversive in that it takes this kind of science fiction trope and then turns it into something meaningful and kind of frames it a little bit in terms of Black Lives Matter, which I thought was amazing. So hi, Stefan. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, love. I miss you. Hi, Adrian. So there are a couple of questions. Do you have advice for people? This is going back to the conversation. Ronnie, did you lost weight? This is a great name. Asked the question when we were talking about the importance of networking. Do you have advice for people that live outside of LA and New York? That's a tough one.
That's a tough one. I mean, many writers I know, move back to New York even after they're established. A lot of people come out to LA to meet people. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, the best I could say is maybe like try to find a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend to get something to someone, but it's hard. A lot of writers, I guess there's contests and stuff that you can enter. The Blacklist has a contest. Humanitas, well, some of those are college, but Blacklist isn't. But I guess there's maybe competitions you could try to get into. That's a way to do it. But a lot of writers I know, moved out to LA and like became assistants just so they could meet people. They became assistants at agencies, management companies, writers assistants, interns, that kind of thing. I mean, I've had a couple of hi, sister. I've had a couple of interns or people work for me even as an assistant who kind of came later and was like, what I really want to do is be a screenwriter. And I was like, okay, come on, give them over.
It's on the one hand, it's easier because there's the internet and the world has flattened to some degree, but it's not like being a musician where anybody can fucking put something up on SoundCloud or whatever, right? Yeah. So it is hard. And again,
and I would say look for the competitions. That might be a way.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
But it's hard.
Yeah. And then another question from somebody is Tarek Bishara Official said, I love the name Tarek, by the way. I just recently rewatched Silver Linings. What was the development process for that like? Was that a book, by the way?
It was a book. It
Oh,
was
okay,
a
I
book.
didn't know that. All right.
It was a book. Yeah. I read it as a manuscript. It was a manuscript. It wasn't published yet when I first read it. Um, the development process like that on that was was actually really, really good. Um, we read the book. I read the book, and then I partnered at the time with Sydney Pollack on the book, and then we brought it to Weinstein Company, and one of my very closest friends was the executive at Weinstein Company at the time, and she and I really were running with it, and we felt that we really wanted a writer director with a particular tone on that movie, because the book felt like it could go, let's talk about tone, it felt like it could go very, very saccharine, and maybe a little twee pretty easily. So we wanted someone who had a sharper edge tone, who had a really interesting way of looking at the world. And honestly, like David O. Russell was our first choice, because we felt like if he really if he wanted to do this and take it on, he could undercut what could, and it wasn't that the book was, it just felt like the adaptation could go that way, that it could go sort of like, you know, again, a little saccharine, a little surfacey. So, so we wanted someone with a really unique point of view. And, you know, David has the process that he has. And it was actually his first adaptation of a book. Yeah. And, you know, when he initially went into it, you know, he's someone who we didn't do an outline process first. He just wrote, and I just kept saying, I'm dying to see how you handle the dance stuff. And you know, when the first draft came in, it was there were a lot of pieces around, but it was, you know, really trying to figure out how to move those pieces around from the book. And so I did, you know, I did notes and gave him notes, and he was really incredibly collaborative on notes. He really liked, you did not get off the hook with your notes. You know, you gave notes to David, and he really wanted to talk about them. Like I thought, oh, he, you know, I hadn't worked with him before, and I thought, oh, he's, you know, he's not going to really want to hear a lot of collaboration. He's just going to know what he wants. And he really wanted to really talk through things like, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean? And it wasn't challenging. It really was very inquisitive. And I thought I was surprised by it, and it was fantastic. And he'd really want to talk through, you know, scenes before he wrote them to see if those felt like they would solve the problem. And I would say that by the time he did his, I would call it like a draft and a half. So there was the first draft. By the time he did a draft and a half, it was very close to the movie. There were a few things that changed, but it was pretty close. It was pretty close. He had made the decisions about things to leave out, and you know, really took notes on the Tiffany character really well. It was a good process.
Well, good. And the last question we're going to take is from my dear, amazing friend, Kierna Mayo, whom I'm dying to work with. And Ramo, I actually think you came by our live. We did a live a couple of weeks ago about being a storyteller as a woman of color, d'un certain âge, as the French would say, of a certain age. And her question is, what's your advice? Oh gosh, there are a bunch of, what's your advice for middle-aged
we can take more if you want. It's up to you.
Okay. What's your advice for middle-aged screenwriters, executive level print, digital career turned writer? So she's really being kind of, she's not doing herself justice. Kierna founded this amazing magazine called Honey. She also was the editor-in-chief of Ebony magazine. And she's an amazing writer, an amazing thinker, and an amazing storyteller. And she is looking to transition into film and television. And in fact, I would love us to find something to work on together. And she talked about this phenomenal idea. Kierna, what was it? It was like Nurse Jackie, around a Black protagonist, right? Who?
Oh, shh. Give it away.
Oh, no. She actually said it publicly, and she was totally fine.
Okay.
No, I said the same thing. I was like, oh my God, do you want to talk about this? But it was a really great idea. So Remo, how would you recommend for somebody that has a tremendous legacy as a storyteller and facilitating other storytellers becoming a screenwriter, and she's a writer as well, becoming a screenwriter and breaking into this? And I think she's talking specifically, I think, Kierna, you want to be more in television than film.
I'd write a script to start.
Okay.
Write a spec script, write a pilot script, write a, it doesn't have to be a feature script. I would write a script. I mean,
Kierna, did you want to actually write it? Oh, by the way, the idea is Black Nurse Jackie meets it grown up Insecure, which is amazing.
So I'm thinking she's saying she wants to write it.
Yes, Kierna, you want to write it, right? So I guess, so Remo, are you saying write the pilot, just go write it?
Yeah, because, really, I mean, when I hire, I like to hire a lot of new screenwriters, and that doesn't mean necessarily, when I say a baby screenwriter, it doesn't necessarily mean a young in age, but newer screenwriters. I do like to work with people like that. And like a lot of times younger writers that I'll hire, they'll have written scripts before the one that they go out to the town with, meaning go out to agents or to try to get an agent. So I mean, at least writing one so that you have something in hand that shows what you can do. And if television is the primary interest, then you can write, a 30-page. It doesn't have to be a 90-page or 120-page screenplay.
Okay, so Kierna said, I've written it. I'm asking about not starting at the bottom in the meeting process. Well, Kierna, what I would say is, this is kind of going a little bit away from development and into pitching. But I think the thing that you do, honey, people, right?
I was just going to say, yeah.
And you know me, and you know other people in television, and people that I'm sure are way more well-connected and powerful than me. And a lot of it is about introductions. So, I just pitched my television show 20 times, 20 fucking times. And what I'm almost certain of is that, well, only one person gets the show, right? But what I'm almost certain of is that 90% of those doors are still open to me and open to my friends. So we're going to have to cut off in 23 seconds, but then we'll come back because I want to answer there are 2 more questions. So, probably, Remo, would you say that Kierna would probably go to team up with a production company who has that access, as opposed to trying to go straight to a network? Because that's really hard.
Yeah, I mean, she would try to team up with a manager.
Okay, we have to come back.
Okay.
That's the stupid limitation of IG that you can only do an hour. So.
So we're done on IG now?
Manager, that's a good idea, Remo.
So are we done on IG now? Or you're going back? Oh, you're going back. Okay. All right. Here, let me.
Oh, Keisha's here. Yeah. Yay. Hi, Keisha.
Okay, wait, I'm sending my. All right, let me do that. Okay.
Keisha's here. Yay. Hi, Keisha. Hi, Keish. Oh, and Dana's back. Hi, Jay Smooth. Hang on, Kierna. We've got more. Remo has another recommendation.
So to get a manager, and you said she knows people, so it's to, whoever she knows can get it to a manager. I mean, if it were a different time, I would say an agent, but it's manager or a producer. That I would definitely look to team up with someone who has connections, and then they can help get you in the doors. It's like the way you teamed up with Michelle and a manager.
Right.
And then that gets you the access.
Yes. So somebody, thank you that I'm an inspiration to Asian Americans. That's exactly what one of my goals. So somebody asked me, what is the name of the movie on Netflix? The name of the movie on Netflix that my boy Stefan Bristol directed and that I'm highly recommending is called See You Yesterday. See You Yesterday. And yes, Kierna, it's all the same hustle. It's all about who you know. And you and I had this conversation. And to Ramo's point about liking working with baby, not meaning young, but new screenwriters, she and I also share the ethos of wanting to work with women of color, to work with marginalized people, right? So it's also about finding those people that are, I think, uniquely interested in helping tell those stories. So another question is from my wonderful friend Tanisha. She said, what kind of things are execs looking for in a pilot in order to greenlight it for season 1? Tanisha, are you asking what are they looking for in the concept or literally in the pilot itself? Because those are two different questions, right, Ramo?
Yeah, I mean, well, what they'd be looking for in the pilot, I guess, and especially in terms of if they're going to greenlight it, it almost would be like they're looking for the series, that there's an idea for an entire series. And I think what really, 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 it's right now, it is so much about a unique voice. It's really about just a very unique, strong voice. And that could be a comedy voice, a strong point of view, really just things that feel, I mean, like we've talked about the Hannah series, which is, it's not really so much the tone, that feels like it has a specific sort of voice to it, but it's so unique in its storytelling. So I think it's like, here, we talked about, and you talked about tone. For me, like what that is and that point of view has to come from the creator. It can't come from me. It has to come from the creator of the show. And I think things that really feel like they're a singular voice are a lot of what people are looking for. And then in a pilot, a pilot that would have to be reflective, of really strong characters, differentiated voices inside of your characters. And then, it wouldn't just be the pilot that would get you a series green light, or even a pilot green light. It would be, what's the series? How's the series built out? What's the season? What's the season?
So Tanisha was asking about both. Hi, Mike Coulter. Tanisha was talking about not just the pilot itself, but the show. I mean, I'm writing a pilot right now for my show, and what they're going to want to see in and of that is what Ramo was talking about, right? How well are you developing your characters? How well are you writing dialogue? How different are you? Don't be formulaic. Do something that we haven't seen before. Be unique. And the thing that everybody has told me, whether or not they wanted to work with me, was, fuck, your voice is loud and clear. It is loud and clear, and it is so unique. My story is unique, but my voice is equally unique. So they're also going to want to see in my pilot, okay, it's great, but to Ramo's point, can we see this going into 8-10 episodes and then 2 or 3 seasons, right? Because nobody wants to do a pilot thinking we're just going to do this, otherwise they fucking make a movie, right? They're thinking, how do we, and do you have a vision? So for me as the creator of my show, I have a vision for my first season arc. I have a vision for my second season arc, and they're going to want to know that you've been able to tease it out that broadly. So from LA said, do we get to know what show you're pitching? I've actually pitched my show and I sold it, and I'm very excited about it. It's a show based on me. It's a show based on my memoir. So it's all about my favorite subject, me. Jennifer Nascimento said, are spec scripts going out of style? Do you think a packet of various sample scenes with original characters would be a good writing sample? Ramo, that's a question for you. I have no idea.
A packet of sample scenes?
Do you think a packet of various sample scenes with original characters would be a good writing sample?
No, I think a script is a good writing sample.
The whole thing, right? Like,
yeah,
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 yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so. I think so. You know, it's very funny. Recently, I worked with someone who I was partnered with someone, and she convinced me to work with a writer that hadn't quite written a whole screenplay yet, but she really loved his dialogue, and it was great. And I had my reservations about it because I need to see that someone can sustain over a screenplay, you know, that they can actually do it. So a sample, it's different than a book sample where you're doing sample chapters with an outline.
Right.
It's very different. It's very different. Because the sample chapters show specifically what you can do, and unless you're already seasoned a couple of scenes and a pitch of a story, yeah, if you're not seasoned, you need a sample. You need to write the
right. Because to Raimo's point, they need to see, you know, Raimo needs to see that you can sustain the idea and that you know how to write within a specific format. What if you don't know people? American African Girl. That was what Raimo spoke to that earlier. You can go watch the live before. Isabel P. I have a pilot presentation, Bible, and trailer. Can I pitch without a complete pilot script? Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Yes.
Raquel Batista just said, what book resources do you recommend? I don't know. I can't speak to this because I already knew people. And for my book, I just Googled everything.
But to go back, I just want to go back to that question about if you have all those things. Yes, you can sell, but it's really best if you want to be a writer, it's really good to have a sample. So even if it's not you don't necessarily have to have the pilot, or you might team up with a much more seasoned writer. But if you want to be a writer, typically you should have a sample.
Yeah.
Writing sample.
Yeah. All right. It's time to go. I have, Kay Prism said the writer's journey is a screenwriter's Bible. I have kept you for over an hour. I've kept me for over an hour. Raimo, by the way, everybody, this is not a call for you to DM her, slide into her DMs and send her a bunch of scripts, just like for me. Stop sending me your YouTube links and your SoundCloud links on like your rap demos. I haven't done that in fucking almost 30 years. So please stop sending it to me. Don't take this as license to hit up Raimo and say, I've got this idea for this film or movie. This is exactly why we, for this film or television show, this is exactly why we do this. We have accumulated decades of knowledge and experience, and we're sharing it with you. And this is not a door to you to now knock on, because I'll tell you what, I won't fucking answer you, or I'm going to answer you and say what I say to everybody, which is stop, right? So don't overstep that line, please. Otherwise, I'm not going to do this with my guests anymore, because they grant me their time and their expertise, which is a gift to me and is a gift to you. I hope you think of it that way. So Raimo, I love you. And I will, I'm going to talk to you Tuesday.
I was going to say, I'll talk to you in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to you in like 30 seconds as soon as I shove some cashews in my mouth because I'm so hungry.
Thank you. This was awesome. Love you.
I love you. You're so amazing. We will do this. We'll do another one again soon. And yes, everybody go watch Stefan Bristol's See You Yesterday, and go watch my Hulu Aussie show.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Defining moments. 3 minutes.
I'll do it. Yeah, it's great.
I'm very happy about it. I'm really proud of it. Tanisha, it was so good to see you, and Kierna and Nicole and Danielle and Michelle was in here. Keisha, thank you. I love you so much. Everybody, thank you. We'll see you again.
Love you.
Bye. Bye.